All right. Well, thank y'all so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. It's great to see everyone. And I want to just give Elizabeth and Andy Griever so much credit for putting this together every month, for all the work that goes into it. You know, this is a big event. This is like throwing a big, huge party every single month. And you never know who's going to come and if you're going to have enough food and chairs and tables and all that kind of stuff. So I'm so proud of them, and she gives me way too much credit because Elizabeth would have figured out a way no matter what. But I'm so thrilled that I was able to be a part of her path, and with she and Andy as they have ventured out and grown and expanded and just surpassed, I think, anything that she ever imagined, really, at being 5 years in the business. She's just come so far. So both of you. So I love you both. Thank you so much for letting me be here today. I really appreciate it. And then to Glade, to Dragos, who runs this beautiful art gallery, he actually lets us, with Network in Action, we have all of our meetings here. So I'm just so grateful for that. And then truly Nick for taking care of the video stuff. So I see so many faces in here that I love and that means so much to me. And I feel like a lot of you probably know parts of the story, but maybe you don't know the whole story kind of in order. The older I get, the longer my timeline is. And so as I try to, I know. And so as I try to nutshell things today, I'll try to go through, just kind of hit the highlights of things that have really shaped me and who I am, and the people that have affected my life and helped me get to where I am, and then the challenges that we face presently. You know, the world is really crazy right now. So I have to tell you, I'm going to be really honest. I'm going to talk about authenticity later in my speech, but today's speech is probably the hardest one I've ever put together. And I think it's because I don't really like to talk about myself. You know, if I was talking about networking, I can do that all day long. Eyes closed, wouldn't have to think about it. I wouldn't have even put any time into it. I would have just stood up here and told you what I know. But when you start talking about your own life and the struggles and the things that have happened in the past and all of those the things that have shaped you and formed your personality and the way you view the world, it's kind of a whole different ballgame. So I am going to be as real with you as I possibly can be. If you know me, you really do know that I'm an open book. So I'm just going to, like I said, I'm going to hit the highlights, and then I just have a few thoughts to share with you at the end of it, and I'm going to try to make it worth your time being here today. I will do my best. So, Kat, will you give me a signal when it's 15 minutes? So what have I got till 1 o'clock? Is that right? It's 12, right? Okay. All right. So starting out, I am a preacher's kid. So I'm the oldest of 3 children. My dad has been a preacher for 52 years. And he is still preaching. He writes 2 or 3 books a year. He travels the world. He's planted churches all over the world. And I am very grateful for the way that I was raised. I was well loved. I was well taken care of my entire life. But most of all, my parents raised me to love the Lord. And they gave me a strong moral compass. That is not to say that we have always agreed on things, but they really gave me a very strong moral compass that has stayed with me throughout my entire life, and I'm very grateful for that. I really can't imagine going through life without having that direction that I have always had when times got tough. I knew to look up, and they were the ones that taught me that. So I have 2 little brothers. I call them little, you know, they're 40 and 45 now, but they're still little in my mind. And so I am the oldest, which, you know, when you're the oldest child, raise your hand if you're an oldest child, you feel responsible for the whole world, right? And you just carry that with you your whole entire life. So I was their mother. My mom was sick a lot when they were children, when they were itty bitty, and so I took care of them a lot. So I don't have children of my own, but I say I raised my 2 brothers. So I have a little niece that she looks just like me, she acts just like me, she talks just like me, and my brother says, "How did this happen?" And I say, "She is God's reward to me for not killing you when you were little." That's why. So I grew up most of my life, you know, being a preacher's kid, we did bounce around quite a bit. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, but we moved to West Texas out in Abilene, and that's where I spent most of my growing up years until right before I started high school. Out in West Texas. And so we moved to Richmond, Virginia right before I started high school. We moved there. My dad took a job there. He was getting his doctorate from the University of Virginia, and went to Virginia, hated every minute that I was there, came back to Texas as fast as I could. I went to Abilene Christian University, and I did graduate, like Elizabeth said, with a teaching degree. So I think I picked teaching because I just didn't know what else to do, to be honest. But it really has served me well, the experiences that I did have as a teacher, so I am grateful for that. But I knew pretty much year 2 in teaching that I'm not going to do this forever. It was just, we need good teachers so badly. But for me, it was just, there was too much of a ceiling. I was too limited in what I could make in my income and what I could just do personally and different things like that. I love the kids, but the administration drove me crazy. That part of it. And Bill is a recovering teacher too. He's nodding his head here. So yeah, but I am so thankful for those years that I taught and what I did learn, the skills, that I learned. And I got married right out of college. I had a teaching job that was lined up for me before I ever graduated. I actually replaced my 4th grade teacher. So I went back to the elementary school that I had gone to. I replaced my teacher and taught 4th grade. Like I said, by about the 2nd year, I kind of knew I wasn't going to do that forever. I had gotten married right after college, and I made a very, very bad choice. It was the worst decision of my life, was to marry this man. He was later diagnosed as a narcissistic sociopath. And if you know anything about narcissistic sociopaths, they are chameleons. So they become whatever they know that you want them to be. And then as soon as they get you, they turn on you. And literally on the plane, on the tarmac, taking off on our honeymoon, he became a different person. I remember taking off to Mexico and thinking, who is this sitting beside me? And that was the beginning of a very abusive relationship, emotional abuse, a lot of verbal abuse. At the end, he threatened physical abuse to me. And I took 7 years of that. And really because of the way that I've been raised, nobody in my family had ever been divorced. That was never even a consideration. And I stayed. And I stayed 7 years. And in the process of all that, it ruined my health. For one thing, my health was really in shambles by that point. I had stopped teaching after 6 years. I was with him for 7. What I did the last year that we were married, I'd actually gotten a job with my church. I lived in Plano at the time, just outside of Dallas. And I had a job as a children's minister that I loved. And I really thought I had found my calling. I thought, this is what I'm going to do forever. It was a big church. It was a big program. It was a lot of responsibility. I was in my late 20s. I look back and think, how did I ever get that job? And why did they give it to me? I'm not sure. Because there was so much responsibility with it. Unfortunately, when I went through divorce, I decided to leave the marriage. The church decided to fire me because they did not want a divorce minister on the staff. There was a lot of angst that went with that because, it came out in the end that he was actually having an affair with a woman who was in our Sunday school class. And it was, and they basically said, we'll pay you 3 months severance if you'll just go quietly and keep this a secret. And so there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And my family, my parents, they had a really hard time dealing with it. Like I said, nobody in my family had ever been divorced. And it caused a lot of problems between my parents and I. And we went through a really, really rough patch there. So, the biggest thing was, when I decided to leave, my whole world came crashing down. I literally lost everything in one day. I lost my home. I lost my marriage. He had drained the bank account. So every penny I had was gone. Every friend I had was wrapped up in my church. And the people, that's where I worked. That's where I went to church, everything. And nobody understood why I left because the only way that they would give me 3 months severance was if I left without saying anything and explaining. So it looked like I was the crazy one. And so I lost everything, truly in one day. And like I said, my health was it was very precarious at the time. And I remember just getting down on my knees one day and just saying, God, just let me die. Just let me die. I would rather die than deal with this. It's just too much. He said, no, you're going to go through this. He pushed me through it. And it was, are you okay? Okay. It was, it's one of those things that I look back on and I don't know how I got through it, but I just know that I got through it. And I'm sure a lot of you have had experiences like that. And you just look back and all you do is you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You keep breathing. I remember one day thinking, I don't think I can make it through the day, but I can make it the next hour. And so there, for a while, for about 3 months there, I would just look at the clock every hour and go, okay, I've made it an hour. I'm going to go another hour. So I moved back to Virginia to be near my parents, which it was a good and a bad decision in a lot of ways, but it was what I did. So I went back there, and I was going through some treatments for my health. I was really seriously ill. And after I had finished up my treatments from that, I had to decide what I was going to do the rest of my life. And the doctor said, you got to watch the stress and all this kind of stuff. So I got a job in retail. I just did retail sales. I was out for a walk. I passed through a shopping center a lot like Market Street. There was a boutique. They had a sign in the window. They had pretty clothes and jewelry, and I was like, woo, squirrel. So I went in, and they were hiring somebody part-time. They needed somebody like 12, 15 hours a week, and honestly, that was about all I could handle at the time. But I met this lady. Her name is Patty Gray, and she was the manager of the store. She hired me on the spot, come and work with us, and I walked into this world of retail and sales. Now, I had always loved clothes and shoes and jewelry and all shiny things, and I could dress myself, but I found out, working there, I had a knack for dressing other people. And but on top of that, Patty had a business degree. She had been in sales for years. Patty was about 7 years older than me. She had studied fashion design. She had studied merchandising, and so it was a small boutique. It was privately owned, and she really just took me under her wing, and she taught me all aspects of business. I mean, I learned about the invoicing, and I learned how to hire and fire, and I learned the merchandising end of things and the sales end of things, and we put on events and different things like that, and she taught me so much, and she gave me such a direction. And it was a small little place, and we had regular customers, and those people became my friends because I had not kept in touch with anybody in Virginia, and I was really just starting all over when I went up there. And so it just gave me a whole new path in life, really. And I had so many opportunities that stemmed from working in that little boutique. I started having people ask me to come and produce fashion shows for their nonprofit and to do different things for them. And it kind of exploded in this whole different world. And so I did that until my husband and I ended up moving. We got married. So I met my husband, Greg, while I was working in the boutique. And the funny thing is that we were both from Texas. And he had moved up there because his ex-wife had remarried and his children were in Richmond. But both of us, when we met and started talking, we bonded over the fact that we wanted to get out of Richmond as fast as we could. We wanted to get back to God's country down here, as fast as we could. So as soon as his youngest daughter graduated, he put in for a transfer with his company, and I ended up running the boutique. I was the manager. My friend Patty, she had gone out and started her own store, and had gone on to do other things, and so we were ready to move. We wanted to come back down here. We got transferred to the Woodlands. It took a while for us to get here. We bounced around a couple of places, but we got here to the Woodlands, and that was 18 years ago. It'll be 18 years in the spring that we came here. And Market Street was brand new. I think it had been here like a year. And we had just been driving through the Woodlands. Greg actually found Market Street kind of on accident and said, you ought to go over there, and it looks like they have high-end stores. So I just walked in cold turkey to a boutique over there, and they hired me on the spot when I told them what my sales experience was. So I took a part-time job with them in sales and buying. Learned a lot working in a place like Market Street, the market, that kind of thing. It was a little bit different than what I was used to. And but when we moved here, I did not know not one single soul. I'd never moved anywhere where I knew absolutely no one. No family, no friends, nobody at all. I had never done that before, but that's how we were here. Not too long after we moved here, Greg was sent to New Orleans. It was after Katrina. He works for an insurance contracting company, and he was sent there with his job. He contracted meningitis while he was there, and he came back sick. And so I took him to the emergency room. We didn't have a doctor here. I didn't know anybody. There was a couple named Randy and Lisa Otts. They owned a travel company, and they had become customers of mine at the store at Market Street. And they were really the only people I knew and the only people that I had their number. They had given me their phone number, said, if you need anything, we've been here forever. We know a lot of people. Let us know. So I reached out to them and said, hey, my husband is in the emergency room. I need a doctor. I need this. I need that. Can you help me? And they really stepped up. And Randy and Lisa, they're some people that, you want to talk about changed my life. They changed my life. So I had shared with them I wasn't real thrilled with my job over at Market Street, and they had a position open for outside sales, and they hired me to come and do outside sales with them in their travel company. And Randy came out of the womb networking. I'm pretty sure, with his goatee and networking as soon as he was born. And he opened me up to this world. I remember he took me to a Chamber of Commerce event, and I had never done anything like that before. And I just started watching him. And the whole time that I was working with Randy and Lisa, they were talking to me because I had this idea, once we kind of got settled here, I wanted to start my own image consulting business. And so I had been playing with that idea for a while, and I had shared it with them, and they encouraged me so much in that path. And I learned so much from them about just, because with Randy, he was a one-man show, basically. And so he taught me, everything, website design and how to design your own business cards and all this kind of stuff. And then he started helping me do that for my own business. And after a year of working with them, they pushed me from the nest. They took me to lunch one day and said, "We love you, you're fired. It's time for you to go out." Because at that point, I was working about 20 hours a week for them and about 20 hours a week for myself. And they said, "It's time for you to go do your own thing full time. Goodbye, we love you." And they pushed me from the nest very hard. But it was the kindest thing that they could have done. We laugh about it, I mean, truly. And they had really poised me to be ready. And so the first thing I did is I threw a big fashion show. I went and talked to all my contacts over at Market Street. They let me borrow all these really expensive clothes and put on a fashion show. And I think you were a model in that one, weren't you, Julie? Yeah. And that was kind of how I launched my business. Julie Peters invited me to my first BNI meeting. I had, that was even more, Randy had shown me networking, but Julie had introduced me to BNI and really the world of like specialized networking, and all that came with it. And that just, I was a part of BNI for a long, long time, and it just opened me up to, again, a whole new world. It really did. And I just enjoyed it so much. And I look back, with my image consulting business, I had it for about 12 years. I produced fashion shows. The business morphed and changed over the years. I ended up going in more of a corporate direction with my image consulting. And I started doing big events and things like that for businesses. I even had corporations would ask me to come in and write their dress codes for their company and work with their employees. And so it was more about the PR for companies and things like that. So I had just great opportunities with it. I'd kind of gotten to the point with BNI that I had outgrown. It's 15? Okay. So I'd kind of gotten to the point with BNI that I had really had outgrown it. It just wasn't the kind of networking that I needed any longer. And I decided if I was going in more of a corporate direction, I really needed to start probably networking more down in Houston. And so I had this idea, I sent out an email to a bunch of people around here, and I said, "I'm going to start networking in Houston. If you know of any networking groups down there, please let me know." And one of my friends emailed me right back, and he said, "Hey, there's this new networking group out there called Network in Action. A friend of mine owns a franchise. He was the first franchise owner with it. Here's his name and number. Give him a call. Go see him." So the gentleman's name is Moose Rosenfeld. It sounds like a made-up name, but that really is his name. And so I went down to his Network in Action down in Houston, and this was 5 years ago. And I just loved it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to join this group down here. My idea was kind of, take one day, go down to Houston, hit a breakfast, a lunch, and a happy hour, and just start building my network down there like I had up here. But while I was there at the meeting that I attended, the founder of NIA was actually at that meeting, and we started talking, and he said, "Why, with all these contacts and all the people up in the Woodlands, why are you going to come down here? Why don't you just buy your own franchise from me?" And I went, why don't I do that? So I got in the car and I called my husband. I said, "Honey, we're buying a new business. Guess what?" And he went, "Oh my goodness." You would think he wouldn't be surprised by things like that from me by now, but he was. And so what a lot of people don't realize, NIA has been such a blessing. And if you don't really know what Network in Action is, just in a nutshell, I'm a professional matchmaker for business owners. So, I just put people together in groups where I believe they're going to have good synergy, and we create opportunities for them to be able to network and build relationships and be able to be resources to one another and just help each other build their businesses. And it was really the culmination for me. The opportunity with NIA was the perfect combination of all the things that I had done in the past: my teaching skills, my sales skills, my putting together events skills. I mean, everything that I had done really led me to that point where I just really was able to step into it very easily. What a lot of people don't know is that when I did go into NIA, my idea was it was going to be a side gig for me, because I'd always networked, and that was But I would keep my image consulting business. But what a lot of you probably don't know is that I actually went into it with a business partner at the time. And what happened very early into the partnership was my business partner just kind of had a perfect storm of things that happened both professionally and personally. And we had only been in the business about 2.5 or 3 months. And he came to me and said, you're going to have to buy me out. And at that point, we had 2 franchises. So we had 2 groups going. I had an image consulting business. That's how I was making my money, because NIA was a new business. I wasn't making any money off of it yet. And he came to me and said, which meant I had to take on all the debt of buying 2 franchises. And that had not at all been in the plan, and all the work on top of it all. And it was, it was very overwhelming. And I had this point where I had 2 choices. I could walk away from NIA, and I told my husband, if we do that, my reputation here will be ruined. We will have to move. We will have to leave. We will have to go somewhere else. There's no way. Or I can suck it up and just work really, really hard and figure this out and get these franchises paid for and make this work. And so, I chose the latter, and I'm very thankful. But I'll tell y'all, the next 14 months, it was not easy. It was very, very hard. But, I got to the point I was making a profit, and, things were really good. I bought 2 more franchises the following year. And then life changed a lot for me in 2018. So the beginning of 2018, my husband, a lot of y'all know, he suffered a life-threatening event. He had an abdominal aortic aneurysm. He had an aneurysm that was so large in the curve of his aorta that it actually made his entire aorta come apart. It dissected. And so our life since then has been very, very different. It's kind of marked by before Greg got sick and after Greg got sick. He suffered a stroke last summer. It's kind of an ongoing thing that we deal with his health. In the midst of all of that, my father-in-law was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and we lost him last year. And so, in the midst of trying to take care of him and help take care of father-in-law, Greg is an only child, and so we had a lot of responsibility there while his dad was ill to help with that. And so it's been a lot to juggle. It has been a lot to juggle. And I have a lot of people ask me, how have you made it through all this stuff? And I'm just hitting the highlights. There's so many other little things that I'm not even telling y'all about, how have you made it through this stuff? And so that's really what I want the rest of today to be about. I'm just going to share. I'm not saying that I have everything figured out, because I do not by any means, but I can just tell you that I just want to share with you kind of how I've kept going and why I have kept going. And I think right now, the overriding emotion that people have is fear. And I find that in most people that I talk to these days is people are just afraid. They're afraid. Things are so uncertain. Our entire world has been turned upside down in the last 2 years. Nothing is the same. There's no way to really predict where do we go from here. It's just, there's a lot of fear that is running rampant. And, like I shared with y'all, I am a person of faith, and that is something that has carried me through. And I think that, the thing is, fear is a liar. That's the thing. And I'm not going to tell you, I can't tell y'all how many times I've had to stop myself just this week and tell myself, fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. And sometimes it's been multiple times a minute that I've had to do that. But, I think that part of the challenge that we have when we feel fear is it makes us feel powerless. And there is nothing worse than feeling powerless. And what I have found is that we are never powerless. And again, that is a lie that we can tell ourselves. That's the story that we can often let run through our heads. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible comes from 1 Timothy 1:7. And it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love." See, Marcia knows it. Power, love, and self-control. And so what I really want to talk to you about today is using your powers for good. We all have power, all of us. And we all have this ability to make a choice. I think, choice goes back to the Garden of Eden. She could eat the apple or not eat the apple, right? And I think a lot of times when we get into difficult situations, we have that fear is because we are trapped and we think we don't have a choice. And we think that there's only one way that this can go, and there's only one way that we can do it. And one phrase that I just cannot stand to hear people say is, well, I didn't have a choice. Because it's a cop-out. And it just is. And I really want to challenge you today to remove, if that phrase is a part of your vocabulary, that you remove that from your vocabulary starting immediately. Because we always have a choice. We have a choice to do right or wrong. We have a choice to love or hate. We have a choice to forgive or to hold a grudge. We have a choice to be bitter or to be better. We have a choice to let life run us over, or we have a choice to pick ourselves up and move on, even if it's from minute to minute or hour to hour. So I really want you to think about, as you come into situations here in the future, to stop when you feel that fear, when you feel that powerlessness, to stop and think, what are my choices here? Because you do always have a choice. Sometimes it seems like it's two bad choices that you have to pick from, but we always have a choice. And I think that when we tell ourselves that and we let ourselves know that, we start to get that power back, and we start tapping into it and take responsibility for it. This is the choice that I've made. The second power that we have is influence. You know, I don't think that people ever give themselves enough credit for how much influence that we each have in other people's lives. It is truly incredible. When I was preparing my speech yesterday, when I was working on things, I was thinking about Patty Gray, the lady I was telling y'all about that ran the boutique. And so I sent her this text message. Let me get my old lady glasses out here so I can read it to you. Because I just started thinking about, I know I tell Patty all the time that I love her, and we stay in touch, and we talk quite often, and we see each other. But I thought, I don't know if I've ever told her how significant she is in my life. So I just grabbed my phone really quick, and this just took a minute. I said, good morning, I'm thinking about you today. I'm giving a speech tomorrow to a group of business owners. They have asked me to tell the story of how I got to where I am now. I can't look back on my story and not think of you and all the years and laughs and memories and lessons learned. I'm not going to cry, Lucille. If I look at Lucille, I always cry, y'all. I don't know what it is because she's so sweet. If I haven't ever told you, you changed my life and took me in a whole new direction when I had none. I am forever grateful to you and to God for crossing our paths. I wouldn't be who I am or have what I have if it hadn't been for you. And it didn't even take me a minute to text that because it was so from my heart that I felt it. And she texted me back and she said, I want you to know right now that I am crying. Thank you. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. I do believe people are put in our lives for a reason. And she went on to ask about Greg and how he was doing. So, we all have influence. Wherever it is, we have influence over every life that we touch, every word that we say, every path that we cross. And we don't ever give ourselves enough credit for that influence. And I think sometimes we don't take responsibility for the influence that we have, and we tell ourselves that we don't matter. But influence is in everything that we do. It's in every word we say. It's in how we treat each other. And it is such a great power that we all have that we discount and we don't ever really think about. You can set the temperature in a room just by walking in it. We all know those people who they either suck the life out of the room when they walk in, or they bring the light and the energy to the room. Influence is so powerful and so strong, and a lot of times it's not even the words that we say. It's just how we treat each other. It's just how we talk. It's just how you hug somebody, how you look at them, your body language. Influence is strong. So it is a power that I really want to challenge you to tap into. Influence can be used in such strong ways. And I think right now, more than ever in history, we need you to stand up and use your voice and the influence that you have. There is right, there is wrong. And those things need to be stood up for and they need to be said, and you can influence. I think so many of us feel powerless about what's going on in the world right now, but we are not powerless. We are not. And we can do something about the injustices that we see and the things that we want to change. So I really want to encourage you to use that. Our next power is the power of leadership, and I could talk about this one all day long, but leadership is such an honor. It's a privilege, but to be a leader, you got to have people following you, right? So how do you be a leader that people want to follow? You got to love people. It goes back to that scripture in 1 Timothy. We have the power of love and self-control. The power of love is incredible, and it changes the world. It moves the needle. People, we've all heard that saying that people don't remember what you've said, but they remember how you made them feel. And love is so powerful. And if you are going to be a leader, you have got to love people. And if you're in a leadership position and you don't love people, you need to do something else, quite simply. And not everybody are people. There are people who do not love people. They love animals. They don't love people, and that's okay. I'm married to one. So, yeah. I tell everybody he would rather have his fingernails pulled out one by one than go to a networking event. That is the last thing that he wants to do. So that's okay. And he has a job where he's by himself all day long and he loves it that way. So, leaders, to be a leader, you have to be willing to deal with disputes and conflicts and talk to people. And I think the thing that I have learned the most this year, and, God keeps teaching me this lesson. When you don't learn something the first time, he throws you the challenge again. If y'all didn't know that, he puts you through the test again. So one of the things is, I am not crazy about conflict. I don't like to deal with conflict a whole lot. I have had so much conflict in my life in the last year, and the Lord has really taught me the strength of talking to people in truth, but in love. And being able to talk to them about things that I saw that I felt like probably needed to change in their life, to tell them, I think, I love you, but I do think you're wrong about this. There's a lot of disagreement in the world right now about all the stuff that we know people are disagreeing on. And to be able to say to somebody, I love you, but I disagree with you, but I still love you. I just don't think the same way that you do. That is very powerful, and it can be done in love. The last thing is the self-control part. In that scripture, He did not give us a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and self-control. And when I'm talking about self-control, I'm not talking about so much about eating. I think that's what people think about, or exercising with self-control. But I think one of the reasons that our world is in such conflict right now is because people do not control their actions and their tongues. And because of social media, people can open up Instagram, open up Facebook, and they can blast out and they can say whatever they want to say. And they think that it's almost like they think it's anonymous and there are no consequences because they're not facing somebody when they say them. And it's a terrible epidemic. I feel like that is the real pandemic, is a lack of self-control that people have in the way that they react to situations and the way that they treat other people, the things that they say. The thing is about words, they cannot be taken back. And you put it out there in writing, it really can't be taken back. And so I just think, how different would our world be if we all tapped into our powers of choice and influence and leadership and love and self-control, and before we said things that we shouldn't say, what if we all stopped and thought about it first? Something else that I have learned in the last few years is what I call the 3-day rule. When something happens that I am not happy about, or a conflict arises or anything like that, a phone call that is upsetting, I wait 3 days before I respond. An email, whatever, I wait 3 days. I had something happen, just recently. Somebody came to me, they shared some news. It was going to affect a lot of people. They wanted my advice about it. And I just looked at him and I said, I can't really give you any advice about this right now. This is really upsetting to me. I'm going to wait 3 days. And then can we talk then? And he was like, well, yeah, okay. And so I went home and I prayed about it and I thought about it, and And then we were able to have a really constructive conversation after that. If I had reacted and said what I really wanted to say, it probably would have wrecked our friendship. If I had really said what I wanted to say. And so there's just because the phone rings, you don't have to answer it. Just because you can say it doesn't mean you should say it. It's like I used to tell the ladies in fashion shows, just because you can fit in it, it doesn't mean you should wear it, So it's the same thing. Just because, you can say it, it is a free country, and you can put it out there. But you cannot take it back. And just because you can say it, it does not mean that it should be said. And so I really want you to think about the 3-day rule. I cannot tell y'all how much stress it has alleviated in my life. And that's what I tell people. I'll just say, I'm going to think about this for 3 days, and then I'll get back with you. And that's it. That's all I have to say. I don't have to explain anything else, but I'm going to think about this for 3 days, and then I'm going to get back with you. I don't know what it is about 3. That's been my magic number. Maybe it's because it's the number of days that Jesus was in the tomb and then he rose. I don't know. I'm not sure. God, Holy Spirit, Jesus, I'm not sure. But there's something about 3 that after 3 days, I can get my mind wrapped around it and I'm able to answer and to give a better answer, I feel like, and not to be so reactive. So, I am going to wrap up. I'm not going to go over time. But I hope this has been helpful to all of you, just giving you something to think about. Like I said, I am not saying at all that I have things figured out in any way. I'm just telling you some things that I feel like have made my life a little bit easier and the lessons that I have learned. And I really want you to walk away today, even if you just pick one of these things, but to remember that you can use your powers for good. Can you imagine, the people in this room, the business owners, all the people that all of us know, if we just got our contacts out on our phone, how many thousands of names, how many thousands of people would that be? If that contact sphere that we have, if we treated all of them with love and with respect and use self-control, if we were proactive and not reactive to our employees, to our family members, can you imagine the difference that just the people in this room can make in our community if we live like that all the time? And this is where it starts, right here. This is where it starts. The small business owners are the people that rule the world, whether government knows it or not. We are. That's it. And so if we can use these powers and tap into them for the good of our community, the good of everyone, I think it will just make the biggest difference. So thank you so much for listening to me today. I appreciate it.